Yeah, so today's speaker is Dr. Greg Vanderheiden. He is the director of Trace Center here at the University of Maryland, and which was founded in 1971. And he's been a pioneer and has been actively involved in technology and disability. So, without further ado, I'll let him take the stage.
So this is a talk that I've been presenting to Google and Apple and Microsoft and things like this. We are actually in a situation where we have a crisis coming on, and so I'm going to do a presentation in three parts. First is an emerging problem, and it's one of our own making actually. Then I'm going to talk about Morphic and the effort toward making computers usable by people who currently can't use them. And then finally, I'm going to talk very briefly about the need to rethink accessibility in the future, and the fact that we should actually be in the future thinking of accessibility completely upside down from the way we're doing it today. I'll take questions at the end. I'm going to try and race through all of the content in the meantime. So we'll hold questions to the end. We actually have an emerging crisis, and it's of our own making. While technology is really enabling independence, employment, and participation for some individuals, it's actually creating barriers for others. People used to be able to, and I did when I grew up, and but even more recently, people could get an education, they could get employed, they could live independently without needing to understand and use technology. But not anymore. Today, you can't get a job if you can't use computers. You go to the AJC and you can't even, the American Job Centers at One Stops, it's where if you don't have a job, you can go and they help you find a job and register for unemployment and all that stuff. And you have to do it on a computer. And we have people going into these places who sit down at these things and they're just not only can't use them, they're afraid of them. We have individuals who come in and who will sit down at a computer, and the next day we see them standing, and there's 24 identical computer stations, okay? And they're standing waiting for someone to get off that computer. And they wait for 20 minutes, and they finally give up and leave, come back a couple hours later when it's empty, and sit down and use it. And you ask them why. And they say, well, I know I can use this one. And you say they're all identical, and they say, I don't know, all I know is that yesterday I could use this one, okay? We have people who can't see. They're sitting here going like this to look at the screen, and you show them, oh, here's a way that you can make it larger. Oh, God, thank you, that's so, whoa, this is so much easier, you know, and faster. You come back the next day, and they're squinting at the screen, and you show them, you know, it's just this button right here, just push right here. And they go, yeah, I know, but I was afraid I might break the computer. And we said, oh, wow, this is amazing, the American Job Center, we have this. So we go to the community college, we find the same thing. And we said, wow, you know, this is really something. And then we come to the University of Maryland, and we hear the same thing from University of Maryland students who sit down and they're afraid to use the computer, they're afraid to do things on the computer because they're afraid they're going to mess it up. And I go all the way back to the job center. This is where you're getting your paycheck. This is the only thing, this is the way you're supposed to find your new job. And then your new employer, you know, wants you to sign in on a computer and do stuff. You go to the doctor and they tell you, you call them up and they say, oh, just go online and get that information. And you go online. You know, for those of us, many of us, that's sort of second nature. You say, oh, no problem. For some of us, you go, well, you know, sometimes when I go online I can do it, and sometimes when I go online I can't. And that's really kind of sad when we're saying that. We are creating a society that requires the ability to understand and use technology, but we're not actually creating technologies that can be used by everybody. Now we make progress, we make special interfaces for people who have disabilities. We have inclusive design, we have screen readers and all sorts of things built into our products. most of which the people who need them don't even know they're there, don't know how to use them. But we're doing this, again, largely for higher functioning individuals. We all know people who are blind who can use screen readers, okay? But do you know that a very large number of individuals who are blind can't figure out how to use them because they're too complicated? And if you don't understand that, try to use one day, and you will just wonder how anybody can do anything. And it's not that just that, oh, you just have to get used to it and you have to learn it. It's really hard. It's really hard. If you want to get an idea for how, take a soda straw someday and spend the whole day where you only use your computer by looking through the soda straw. Okay? You can see one word at a time, and you sort of move or navigate yourself around the page and try and do things like this, but you can't deal with the page as a whole, and you get a little bit of an inkling of what it's like to use a screen reader, which literally does that, just moves a little talking cursor, you know, around on a screen kind of a thing. It's very complicated. Now I have something I call TQ. It's a technology quotient. It's kind of like IQ, but it's completely different. So intelligent quotient, technology quotient. However, they're not the same because I know people that are blazingly brighter than I am who can't use their technology, but I can. Okay? So I can use their technology, they can't, so I'm smarter than they are. No, that doesn't work that way. It's a skill that we have, and we are sitting in a room full of people that all have high IQ and high TQ, and we're trying to figure out how to design things for people who are at the other end. Okay? Now, we used to have, if we take, here's the base and here's the top, it used to be that people up here could use computers and stuff, and then people had a lot of trouble. And then we came out with iPads and stuff, and we were really proud of ourselves because all these new people down here were able to figure it out because it was simpler. And that's really great. But how about all these people down here? We still have people who can't figure out how to use iPads, or they can use them as long as you don't, you know, accidentally make a gesture and the screen changes and they don't know what happened. And they have no idea how to get back where they were. They're lost. They can only do a few things on it. We have people that live on mobile phones, but when you actually ask them about it, what you find out is that they know how to do about 5 apps. They have a whole bunch of other ones they got, and they kind of sometimes can use them and kind of can't, but they're often lost. And if you ever tell them to save a document and open it up, they're going like, what do you mean? You know, if you go into the app sometimes, we have people who go into the browser and they can browse to something, but if you tell them to go back and look through their history or go back to that page, they have no idea how to do that. You know, they have to go back to their Facebook page and find the link on their Facebook, and then they can get back to it. It's a real problem. So even those of us, all of us here who have high IQ and high TQ, how many people here have ever had trouble with their computers or felt lost sometimes? Yeah, okay. So God help, we're way the hell up here, okay? So if we're having trouble, how about the people here? And the real problem is down here, okay? We keep driving it down, and we're doing a good job of trying to drive it down, but we're driving it down to 50 and 40. We're not getting to the bottom 20 and the bottom 10%, okay? And in the past, that was like, okay, not everybody's got to do things the same way. Yes, you do. If you can't use it, that's 10 or 20% of the population who isn't going to be able to get a job, isn't going to be able to do independent living, things like this. There are people that get off and they can't get back on again, okay? So we need to be figuring out how to design things for all. So the irony is that when you add features to make it more accessible, you add complexity, okay? If you're somebody who has opened up the accessibility panel at some point in the past and they found 3 or 4 things there, it was pretty neat. Now you open it up and you've got 30 or 40. Well, if you have a cognitive disability and low vision or you're old, you open up that accessibility panel and you need a tour guide to try and figure out what on earth in there to do. And then each one of those, when you click on it, takes you to another screen with more settings and more settings. So we're adding more and more complexity as we're going. And again, what you'll find out is everybody talks about the wonderful things we're doing for people, the blah, 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 and everybody complains about cognitive because it's the one that we really have the hardest trouble with. Now, we can make things that are too small to see larger. We can have them so we can change things so that the menus are all in whichever language you want to be in. We can make it so that things go high contrast. We can make it so that Word has these menus. So we're out at the community college and we're talking to people there, and they're having people actually fail out of classes like English because they can't use the computers. They had one where they were going to have the students mark up using tracking and highlighting in Word. And after a couple of classes and spending all their time going one by one to each of the students as they're trying to get all lost, they don't know how to do it, they can't find the controls, they finally gave up, printed the stuff on paper, handed out little yellow markers and little red pens, and had them all do all the markup on the paper. And of course it had to be turned in electronically, so then they had to go over and scan it, and then they had to figure out how to get something that was scanned, submit it up to their Blackboard, is what they were using at the time, accounts. Okay? Well, you can make it so that you can take complicated menus and you can make them simple. Okay? Now, all of the things that I showed you here are all built into the operating system. They're already there. We go out and we show it to the colleges and things like this, and they go, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Even people who work in accommodation go, I didn't know you could do those things. And then you'd say, oh, sure, it's not hard. All you need to do is you click on the right side, right-click, you do select menus, and I can actually show you how easy it is. We'll just take this Word, and we'll open it up. So we'll make talk about making a simpler version of a page. So we'll open it up. We got the complex menu, so this is easy. You just come over here and you right-click. That's everybody knows.
It's off screen.
Oh, why is it off screen? Oh, I know why it's off screen, because that's what PowerPoint does. Oh, this is another thing. If you've ever been in PowerPoint and you go up and it puts you into presenter's mode, it then turns off all your screen mirroring. And so if you don't know the secret is you have to go back to PowerPoint and you have to stop your PowerPoint presentation. And after you stop your PowerPoint presentation, now your screen mirroring works again. There you go. Now, so how many people didn't know that? And here we are at this level. So lovely the way they design things. So here we go. We've got all of the different screen things. So if I want to make it simpler, all I have to do is to right-click. Yeah, of course, everybody knows how to do that. You right-click and this invisible button over here. And then you can customize the ribbon. And then you come to this page. And so then you have to know that you need to, first of all, create a group. If you don't create a group, it will stick it in some random place. So you have to create a new group. And then you have to come over, and for every item you want, you have to find it in this list, which I love because they have things like the same thing, like there's an eraser, an eraser, an eraser, an eraser, an eraser. And they're all different, by the way, and they all do different things. So you have to figure out which eraser is the eraser that you saw on that one menu that you wanted that was it. Then you select it, and then you have to click Add, and then it sticks it over in the right place. And of course, this is really good for people who are having trouble with complex menus. This would be the solution to doing it. So this is where we talk about. So we created something called Morphic, and the goal was to try to make these kinds of things simpler. So let's see if we can. I'm going to try to. Well, we'll just go back and forth. There we go. But to use these features, first of all those things you saw, you have to be aware of them, and people are not. The number one thing we got is, oh, I didn't know we do that. Secondly, even if you show them, it's often so complicated that people can't figure out. That one is over the top, of course, for complexity. But even when you have to go into the control panels and navigate the control panels, how many people here have tried to go into the control panels looking for something, and you're searching all over the place. And again, this is the stuff. We not only have higher IQ and TQ to do that, but we have the chutzpah, the whatever to go in. When you're afraid of something and you're afraid of breaking something, are you going to go into the control panels and start looking at all these things and flipping them around? Okay? And then sometimes the feature has to actually be turned on before the user can use the computer in order to go into the control panel and turn it on. So that's a problem. So we've been trying to solve this, and we've been doing something that we call Morphic. And so I'll just take you over here and show you a little bit about what that looks like. Morphic does a number of things. One of them is if, without even doing anything, you can have all of your preferences or your AT or stuff stored. So when you come up to a computer, you can have it automatically applied. You can have it applied like at community college, just when you log in, it'll automatically apply it. Or you can use something like a little USB that has just a big long number on it. It's a UUID. It's like a Swiss bank account. You plug it in, it takes that, it goes to the cloud, and it says, doesn't say who this is, it just says what are the set preferences to go. So this is a person who needs an on-screen keyboard. So it'll automatically bring it up, and it's the right size, it's the right one with the right features that they need. And then when they pick it off, it'll automatically go away. Here's somebody who needs a screen reader. And this is a classic example of somebody, until you turn it on, you can't use the computer to turn it on. So, and they plug in, and it'll automatically launch a screen reader for them.
Is the audio on?
Oh, no, I don't have the audio on. Anyway, you can see JAWS here. There it is. So I don't have the audio on, so you can't hear it, but you can hear. This is a JAWS screen reader. So when I unplug it again, it'll automatically go back and turn it back off again. You can even have it do complicated combinations of things if that's what you wish. Yes, please thank you. But if users don't know about the features, then how do you get it set up? So this is one of the things we had with Discovery. So we created something called a quick strip, Morphic quick strip. And from here you can do things like change the language, you can zoom the screen larger and smaller. So if you're all having trouble reading the screen, for example, I can click here and I can change the screen to make it, you can make them either larger, you can make them smaller, to fit whatever it is that you want to have. We have screen captures for people who don't know. Again, there's a secret. If you know it, you can click over here on the notification, and then there's a little screen snip, and then you can find you've got screen captures. But again, many people don't know that these things are already there, and they need to have use them. We have MS Word Simplify. So we saw Word before, so let's bring Word up again. I'm going to make the screen a little smaller so we can get the full menus. If you want to have, so for the people who just needed to have the basic capabilities, you can click on basic and it will automatically give you just a very basic set, just the simple items that you need. Okay? Now here's something you might find useful, and this is essentials. Have you ever had it where you went into one and then you had to go to a different menu to get to another one? There's 11 of them, and then you want to track it, you got to go over to here, then you want to go back and format it, and then you got to go back to track, and then you got to go back. So you can have something like Essentials, where it gives you one menu with all of the things you need for all of the different categories. So here's all the saves and the insert things. Here's all the inserts that you'd be using, and here's all the different editing and tracking and things like this. So you can just have one menu that has everything that you need on it, and you don't have to jump back and forth, kind of a thing. And again, one of the key things is it has a reset to standard. Whenever you sign in, sign out, or if you sit down at one and it's configured, you can always click reset to standard, and it'll automatically change everything back the way it was. This ability to set things up and set things back is really key, and it's another barrier. We had one older woman we were working with came in for a study, and so we asked, as you always ask, have you used technology before and stuff? And she said, oh yes. And she said, I used to use the computer. And we say, oh, well, you used to? And she said, what'd you use it for? Well, I use it for email, and then I would Skype with the grandkids and the nieces and nephews, and we do this video, and it was really great. And then my friends and I set up this Facebook thing, and I'm going, it's pretty amazing. They said, but you said you used to. What happened? You don't use it anymore? And she goes, well, no. You know, one day I heard the kids in the other room, and they were saying, the computer's all messed up for Grandma again. So I figured, you know, I've had my time. This is their time. So I stopped using the computer. And I just about wanted to die. I mean, it's just like, oh my God. Since I told the story, and been telling the story, I've had all people come up to me and say, oh yeah, that happened to, I know this couple that happened to. And another people came up, oh, I had this other couple that it happened to. Where one of them had to have it all set up and the other one didn't. It was too much of a hassle, so one of them just doesn't use it anymore. And again, the ability to have something that sets up for you and then sets back. They could have done it. You can even do a lot of that by just having 2 sign-ons on the computer. And they go, oh, but that's too complicated. We don't do that. So somebody's not using it for barriers that to us seem like they're just no barriers at all. And that's because we don't understand. It's like sending a football player into a kitchen and say, tell me what's hard to do. And they grab that bottle of pickles out of the thing and they open it up and they say, there's nothing hard to do here. And then you send an older woman in, and she comes in and she can't get the jar open. She can't even get these new magnetic refrigerator doors open. You know, she's got to take 2 hands and plant her feet like this in order to open them. And when they first came out, we remember, some of us remember, that the refrigerator doors used to have a catch, and you grabbed it, it would just pop open. And then all of a sudden it went to these magnetic catches, and the first time you did it, you said, well, this is kind of hard, but how many people here notice that it's hard to pull the door open anymore? You don't. You just grab it, you just give it a jerk, and don't think a second of it. And you don't think about the fact that that's a fair amount of pull on some of those doors to get those things open. Well, that's where we are with technology. We have no idea how hard this stuff is. For example, we were talking to the libraries and we asked them, what is the #1 computer problem that you have? You know, what are the things that you most have to do? And she said, well, one of the things we have to do a lot is somebody will come up to us and they say, well, I have my resume on a USB and I plug it into the computer and then they come look for us, look for the librarian. And what can I do? Well, I plugged my resume in and I can't find it. Where is it? And you go, oh, I guess that's pretty easy. All you have to do is to click on this little file folder down here, and then you have to scroll down to this PC here, and then all these things that show up that all look alike. Well, except that this, let's see now, which one is it? This one here that doesn't look like a USB, it looks like a little standing toaster, I guess, I don't know. But anyway, that's what you click on and you'll get it. And it's like, yeah, but that says, USB drive E or it's whatever, and then this thing says Tom's Trucking, and they don't have anything. So one of the things they asked for is, can you make something that they can just click on a button and it will open it. So it says open USB and bingo. It'll open up the USB and there's your resume. Okay? And then when you click on the resume, it opens up. Okay? And then the other thing they said is, so we did that, and then they came back and said, yeah, but we need one for closing it too. I said, because what people do is they'll come in and they'll take their resume, and then they'll start typing some stuff on it, and then they'll go and they'll pull their thing out and go home. And guess what? Nothing got saved. It's sitting here. And so now when they go to eject, it'll pop up. And of course, oh, that's right. I didn't actually create the thing. So And there you go. See, now it won't even do it because it's been ejected. So what you want to do is to have it set up so that it not only will open USBs, but be able to give you the ability to safely eject them and give you warnings as you're signing out and things like this. Like, don't save. Do you want to save this? Yes, I want to save it. And so now when I eject it, it will eject. The other thing is that some operating systems you still have to do the thing, only you have to teach the people. You have to click on this little icon, and then after you click on this little icon, you've got to find the little thing that looks like this, and then you need to click on this, and then it's safe to pull out your thing without it yelling at you. But people don't know where that is. We also had people who asked us, they said, well, can you make one for volume control? And I said, volume control? And they said, yes. And you said, you mean you want us to make a button where you click here, and then you click here, and then you click here to make it go louder and softer? And they go, yes. I said, okay, well, instead of clicking here, if you just move an inch to the right and click right there, there's the volume. And they go, where's that coming? Really? What'd you click on? And the funny part is I've done this in different presentations, and I click, and whenever I click on it, I always look up quickly because the number of people in the audience all lean forward and say, what did you click on? People who use computers every day and they have no idea that that's there. They have no idea how to do this stuff. So we talked about the digital literacy. We all have a little bit of it. We have the volume moot. We have this, the ability to set contrast, etc. And again, the ability. So here's someone who needs to have it in Chinese high contrast, and they need the screen to be a little larger. And so when they come in, and again, this can be tied into the login, so that when you log in, it would just automatically do this. So right there, you saw things get larger, and now you see they're going into high contrast. And then the next thing you'll do is you'll see that they'll come up in there you go, Chinese. So the menus are now all in Chinese. Okay. And again, when they leave, all they have to do is to unplug or sign out, and the computer goes all the way back to normal. By the way, now this is, we just talked to the university, the library, so Morphic's going to be installed in all of the computers in McAlvin by next semester. The goal is to sort of to move forward from there. All right. So those are some of the different kinds of things that we've been doing. A couple other key things that we built in. If you've ever needed a assistive technology, and you go to a library, either ours or any of the other ones, and they'll tell you, oh yes, if you go upstairs and down there's this one room over there, there's a resource room, and there's a whatever, and there's a computer there that has the AT you want. So it's nice, your friends are all down here, the books you need to research are over there, the quiet place is over there, and you're going to be up in the whatever floor in the room, because that's the only computer you can use. And then you get there and you find out that, yeah, they have a screen reader, but it's not the screen reader you use. So it's like, oh yes, we have a pair of glasses you can use, but not your glasses, here, use mine. And you're sitting down, and if you've ever tried to use a screen reader, well, it would be like if you use Macs, and I said, oh yeah, here's a computer, it's in Windows. Or if you use Windows, and I said, oh, it's a Mac. Or either one of you, and I gave it to you, I said, oh, it's GNU on Linux. And you go, I know how to do this, but I don't know where anything is. I'm, kind of lost. With Morphic, we have something now called installation on demand, where it will, you sit down at any computer in a library, and the AT you need will, if it's not on the machine, will show up on the machine, get installed, and get configured for you. And then when you get up, it goes away. Okay? So now anybody can sit down at any computer and have the AT that they want. Another problem we had was with interns. Now you all know the value of interns. Well, if you have a disability, whatever you think the value of an internship is, it's 10 to 100 times more for somebody with a disability. First of all, this may be the first time they've had any work experience, and they need to figure out, work experience. But more importantly than that, people are afraid to hire somebody with a disability. I knew one person who said, I just flat out won't ever hire somebody with a disability. And I said, why not? And he said, some of them are really, people who hire them find out that, you know, they're some of the most regular, dependable employees, loyal employees. He said, well, I just could never, if it didn't work out, I could never fire them. I said, oh, that's not true. If they can't do the job, you can let them go. He said, oh, no, I don't mean that. I mean, I could never bring myself to fire them. I would feel, once I got to know them, I would feel so bad for firing them that I would never be able to, and so I just never will hire one. And I said, okay. But other people, so his problem is, I don't know if they can do the job. And so an internship is critical for not only this person who's on the extreme, but all employers. Think of yourself. Would you hire someone that you really had no idea if they could do the job? Wouldn't you like to have them come in for an internship? If you thought they were on the edge or marginal or something and you wanted to give them a chance, but you really wanted to learn, so you give them an internship. So we bring these kids in with internships. If they need AT, often it's 2-3 weeks. One case, the internship was almost over before they got the AT that the person needed installed on the computer. All right? Well, you get an internship and you're 3 weeks behind everybody else, you're not going to be doing a very good showing. Internships are serious things. People want you to do serious work. So this was a real problem. And so one of the other things that we are creating in Morphic is something we call instant setup, where you use that installation on demand capability. And you can have it come in with a sterile drive that's got just all of the AT on it, but it's all, you know, virus-free and everything else. And the person's settings. And you can take, the other thing when you go on an internship, you know, is that you don't get to use your computer, you got to use their computer, right? So you sit down on one of their computers, you give this stuff to their IT person plugs it in, and before the person gets back from their first orientation lecture, their computer is completely set up, and it looks just like the one that they have at home, except it's clean and doesn't have all their junk on it. And so they're ready to go. And not only that, but the employer goes, wow, I always heard it was hard to accommodate, you know, people with these disabilities. So that's another capability that we're sort of building and trying to address for people with disabilities. So these are some of the things. So when you look at Morphic, it basically does 6 things. First of all, it exposes the features that are hidden in the computer. It lets you discover all of them. Oh, I didn't show you, there's one of the buttons is more, and you click and you get a whole bunch more buttons that let you access. And you can completely customize the strip. So for example, if you had, we'll come to that. It also makes commonly used features or even programs faster to get to. So you can take the stuff you use, you can program that little script so you can take the stuff off you don't use, put on buttons you do want to use. You can even create your own buttons so that this one will launch this program, this one will launch that feature, etc. And so one of the things you can do is to set it up so that for, let's say you have an older person who's having trouble, you can make it so that it just has 5 buttons. And make it so it always shows, never goes away. So that the 2 features they need, and then here's one for their mail, and here's one for the pictures sharing that they do with their family, and here's one for Skype. And that's it, right there, they got their little bar. And you don't have to explain to them, oh, when you want to do this, you got to quit this program and launch that program. And they go, what's a program? Think about it. Think of an elderly person who's trying to explain to them, what's a program? Well, it's, well, once you learn what they are, you'll know what they are. Because it's really hard. But if you give them 4 or 5 buttons, they don't have to know what a program is or quitting or starting. They just, when they want to do that one, they just push it. Okay? So we can make things simpler in that kind of fashion. We can make it so a person's settings follow them, so that that's the little thing works for her. When she goes to somebody else's house and sits at their computer, she gets her computer back. And it's set up just like she wants it to have. Larger, smaller, whatever she needs to have. There are kids who don't have computers at home. And we go, oh, how could you do that? It's true. We have kids who don't have computers at home. And yet, how are they gonna do their homework and the rest? So they have to use one at the community center, they have to use one at grandma's, they gotta use one at the library, and none of those things are all set up to have the AT they need. This makes it so that they can. And again, with this installation on demand, not only your settings, but the actual AT can follow you as well. You can also have your own different sets. So you can have different preference sets. So if you have one in the morning and stuff, and you have one, when you're tired, your performance, you want to have things different. Or if you want to focus, you can have a preference where you set, and it shuts down all your programs that give you all your interruptions. So your Facebook goes offline, your mail goes offline, your notifications are turned off. And then when you want to come back off, you just select a different one, and now you have all the grand glory of having your connectivity restored back again. And then again, allowing a person to set up a new computer in the job. And this isn't just for people we think of as having a disability. We're actually disabling people today with the complexity. We are taking people who used to be able to live independently and get a job and taking them so they can. And so this is why we're talking to all the tech companies and stuff. We used to think it was them. Well, they just haven't learned it, or they just need to apply themselves. And all I'm going to say to you is that's kind of like saying somebody who can't reach the things on the tall shelf. The problem is they're just not reaching up high enough. They can't reach it, we'll just tell them to reach more. Just try. I can reach it, If they just try, they should reach it. Well, that seems patently stupid to us to have a short person just say reach higher, because you can see they can't reach higher, right? But cognitively, we don't see that. Can you think of yourself as being blind? You close your eyes and try and think of okay. You can think of yourself as not hearing. Try and think of yourself as not being able to think. Or that things that just make absolute sense to you would make no sense to you, okay? And you just can't figure it out. And when we design things, we need to design so they can also be used by people like this, and we can't get there. And we don't realize how prevalent this is. One way of doing it is, what if the only way to get a job is if you could do differential equations? Now, some people say, I can do that. Other people are going, okay? So if you had to have a high MQ, or what if you had to be able to be a great artist, okay? So yeah, right. So those of us who are all smiling because we do differential equations, all of a sudden we go, uh-oh, now we're in trouble. Or what if you had to have high MQ? You had to be able to compose music. So that when you went to take a test, instead of giving you a coding test, what they gave you was a composing test. And you had to sit there in that hour and compose the music and lyrics for a song. Okay? So how many of us would be at a job center feeling hopeless and feeling like we just couldn't make it if we tried? I know that I would. I would be very depressed if that was going to be any job I got that I knew I had to try and do that. So we need to be thinking about that. But we are doing that. We're creating a world where you can't get along if you don't have a high TQ. And we don't notice it because all of us who are designing the world have a high TQ. And we didn't even know what it was. And we didn't even know we had it. I mean, we sort of did. We all knew that we could deal with technology better than some other people deal with technology. But we're not really thinking about the people at the bottom end of that. So we need to figure out how to design for all people. Now, how do you do that? We do it with layering. That is, have an interface where you don't have to have everything, and then you can have more and more and more as you want, so that you can adjust to the layer you want. We can do it by providing easier entry. When you have a game, you can always win the first level, can't you? Right? Because they make it really easy, all right? And then the next one's a little harder, and the next one's a little harder, and the next one's a little harder. That's great. Why don't we design our technology that way? But we don't. All of our technology enters at, the highest level, or maybe one down because they have another panel you can get more settings from. But they never start it, down here. We have people, the Pepco, the energy company, sends out and says, we'll replace your thermostat with a digital thermostat, and it'll save you this much money, and you'll get this much reward. So they say, okay, great, they put it in, and then they can't figure out how to use it.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's like, what do you mean you can't figure out how to use it? But this is a problem. So we need to figure out how to do this, because it's not just employment. We're actually taking people off their ability. And you say, oh, it's going to be easy now because you just talk to Alexa. How many people have talked to Alexa? And gone up, and you can ask it to tell a joke, and you can ask it to turn the lights on, and you can ask it to do this. But then when you ask it to do anything else, it just sits back and doesn't understand you, or it gives you a crazy answer. You have to actually know how to talk to these things. And how many people think that now that they have Alexa, they don't need their laptop anymore? You know, we have this, we have agent stuff coming along, but that has its own problems, and we need to be looking at those too. And some of you are working with people who have cognitive disabilities, some visual and different kinds of things, and you know that the voice interaction, as even when we do Wizard of Oz work, we're surprised at how hard it is, and we have humans listening, much less our agents. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to cover on quickly is doing better in the future by doing it differently. And I'm going to talk about a grand challenge for universal accessibility. And I'm just going to blitz through this quickly, and we can come back and have a longer discussion later. But in today's society, it's no longer possible to live unless you can use digital interfaces. Only a small percentage of products and websites are accessible. And even the big companies have accessibility teams, but most stuff is actually, the volume of it is created by lots and lots of little companies that have no accessibility teams, and they do nothing about it. So with all of the work and effort we're doing, we have, like, it's not good enough. So even if we did have good solutions for all disabilities, and we don't, it's not getting applied using our current approach. It's impossible to train everybody who's designing products at a company with how to make things accessible, okay? Those of us in the room who think about as ourselves, or other people at least think of ourselves as being experts in accessibility, if you ask us to design something, the first thing we do is start calling up our colleagues. Oh, if you want me to do this for all different disabilities, I need to talk to so-and-so. If you want to make it work with people who have dementia, I need to talk to Amanda, stuff like that. Well, if we as experts can't figure out how to design these things without talking to people that these people in the companies have no access to, how on earth are they going to be able to do that after all the years? It's just really impossible to be really good at making it accessible. And when we talk to the people, they say, we can't even make all of our designers aware that there are people with disabilities, much less what all the different disabilities are. And they roll over faster, and every time you train one, they get promoted off in this way, and they bring new people in, and it's a zero-something. You just can't get there. So the way we're doing it isn't going to work for reason number two. And the thing is that most of the products aren't even coming from the big companies that talk about having these problems. They're coming from little companies that have no accessibility program or training or mechanism at all. And finally, it's not possible to create interfaces that will meet the needs of all users, period. You just can't do it. It would be so complicated, it would be like a Swiss Army knife. They used to make a shop tool that you could rearrange to be a table saw or a buzz saw or this saw or a drill or a lathe. And it was crazy because it takes like 10 minutes to do all the jury rigging. You had to be a mechanical engineer to figure out how to use it. And it still only did a small number of tools. When we talk about this, and again look at all the different types and levels of cognitive disability, if you take anything, you can take about 20% of the complexity out and not lose any functionality, because everything's more complicated than it needs to be. But after that, if you make it simpler, you're going to get rid of functions, or you're going to get rid of information. I'm sorry, you just can't make something really, really simple and take your textbooks. Can you make it so it's really, really simple to understand? And the answer is, well, get some of the junk you can get out of there, but from then on, you got to start taking stuff out. So when you're designing for cognitive disability, when you're making a product, which level do you do it? Do you do it for here, or here, or here, or here, or here? If you design it for here, then all these people can't use it, and all these people have to use something that has all this information they didn't need. You have to make something that literally works at all the levels, and so you can't design things like that. So here's the proposition. Instead of trying to make all products accessible to all users, which we can't do, just make them generally usable. In other words, companies no longer have to make their products accessible. All they have to do is to make it so that half of the population can use it. So you put all the people with disabilities down here and all the people with low TQ down here. Just the most able-bodied half. If you can get to that middle, and you can make it to it's at least that usable. And not all products actually hit that mark, but then we will create an AI robot, an infobot, that can look at that interface and it can figure it out. It can understand it and it can figure out how to do what it's going to do. So we can take our AI up to be as smart as, not as smart as humans, but as smart as sort of the middle. And we're not there yet, but we can get there. That's the challenge. And over time, of course, it'll get better and better, and as it gets better and better, companies will have to do less and less. And then on the back of it, it would have an API. And then all the rest of us who want to look at accessibility, instead of trying to figure out how to create an interface to help somebody who's blind use a visual interface, we would say, how would you design an interface if everybody was blind? Okay? If nobody could see, what would computer interfaces look like? And we can make an interface that's optimum for that population. And then the infobot looks at it, figures out what it is, and it presents the interface to the user that's tapped to the user. For people with cognitive disabilities, it presents them to one wherever they are. Actually, it presents one to the level they can understand it, and then it moves up. Because it turns out that if you go down like this until somebody can understand it, once they understand it, usually you can come back up again. How many times have you talked to somebody, you had no idea what they're talking about, and they'd say, well, let me give you an example. And they give you a simple example, and then you go, oh, and now you understand more. That's the same kind of thing, all right? So we can have interfaces that go to where the person is, and then expand to where they can be. And as they go over time, they can go up or down. The benefits, disability experts can now focus on creating the best interface for people with disabilities instead of running around haranguing everybody about the fact that they're not following some set and that they haven't figured out how to do things that actually we don't know how to do either. We don't have to worry about training everybody in the company on how to do each thing for each disability. Because they're never going to figure out how to do that well enough to do a good job. We're still trying to figure out how to do it. And we can't reach anybody into place anyway. Instead of asking them to be cross-disability experts, and there aren't very many of those, we just ask them to address the general usability, just make it so these people can do it. And then we can create interfaces tailored for each different group. Not only that, but because it's a generated interface for the individual, as the main one, how many people had Word and then all of a sudden one day they changed the Word interface? And you guys got all lost and you had to go figure it all out again. Or Windows when they went from one version. So you could have it, especially for older people, as they keep changing the interface up front, they stay the same for the user behind. And again, all products would be accessible all of a sudden instead of 6%, because the infobot has the ability to understand general interfaces. And again, the accessibility rules change from like 180 different rules you have to follow to one. The infobot's got to understand it. Okay? And as the infobot gets better, it'll just keep generating more and more. So now the infobot's only for digital, so we have to have robotics if they have to push buttons, or else it has to guide you in doing that. And we don't yet have the ability to do this, but we will in the near future. It means that all of our policy work on accessibility will have to change, so there'd be a sea change. Jonathan's going, whoa!
A lot of work to do.
Yeah. But it can always be, you can always do it the old way with the rules, or if you just do this, okay? So it's always an or, and then you'll find that everybody will shift to the one that actually works better. So that's the grand challenge. Create an infobot that's powerful enough, and then create the user interfaces, and then create the new contract with the industry. So that's the look at deciding to do accessibility completely upside down from where we're doing it. And that is, we no longer ask companies to, what we do, in effect, is we create the infobot, which, if you will, is a kind of assistive technology. Now, it's fine to continue to make products as usable as possible without the infobot, but you don't have to worry about if you can't get there, because the infobot will take you the rest of the way there. And, by the way, it won't just be people with disabilities using it. We'll all be using it because it'll be in our language, it'll be stable. We have the interface that we like, that they got rid of the last revision. Well, we like this interface over here, but I want that product over there. So it'll be a lot of us that would like to have an interface that's stable and that fits the way we look at things. And if we see 6 things that do the same thing, they'll have the same interface. You have 6 television sets. You buy a new TV set, and the controls don't all change on you. They're all the same way that you like to have them before. And if somebody comes up with a better design, you say, oh, okay, I'll use that design. And so we have 2 competitions. We have 2 markets. We got a market for products. We got a market for interfaces. And for once, you don't have to buy the interface that goes with the product. You can get the product and the interface separately. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
This is really interesting. I think what I was doing here is you're basically pushing with the idea of the AI and the APIs, you're basically pushing the question of standards. What kind of standards are we building to in a different way than it has been done to date? The challenge, of course, is that standards are standards, and then they inevitably become out of date because some new thing came into place that wasn't anticipated.
I can always talk to somebody who's somebody who's worked around standards, because everybody goes standards. Either I don't know what that is, or oh, those are good, right? Standards are evil things. Okay, you never, ever, ever want to standardize unless you have a really good reason to. Now, there are good reasons. If the plugs in the walls weren't standardized, whenever you bought an iron, you always have to, take a picture of your socket and go to the thing and try and find an iron that had the same plug as the plug in your wall. So, interoperability standards we like to have. Fire code standards, we like to have standards. That's a different kind of standard. Compatibility, to plug interfaces into each other, you have to have standard plug, right? And we created one at Trace. And so we went out to industry, and all the researchers in the industry loved it. They said, man, this is what we've been looking for, except you're like 10 years ahead of where we are. This is wonderful. The product owners came in and said, literally one company came in and said, you're leaving right now. You are never going to come back again, and you're never going to call any of our research team. And the research team, if you talk to any of these people again, you're fired, because under no circumstances ever will any of our products ever have an interface socket on it. And we're sort of going, okay, well, bye, and we left. And he was true to his word. The premise is they do not ever want to have somebody using their product while they're looking at somebody else's interface, okay? Because that's what, the products all do the same thing. If you have 10 television sets, they all show TV and they change channels. So the difference, and it used to be it was the quality of the TV, but now they're all so great that it really doesn't matter which one you get. So it's all the name brand and it's the interface and stuff like this. And if somebody else can use their interface to control it. And they fought this for a long time. They're starting to lose the battle now because you can control your TVs with Alexa and stuff like this. So now they're sort of having to give up some of that control. But standards, anytime you create a standard, you freeze things. And if you're a company and you make software and somebody says, well, I want to attach my software at these places in your software, then that's fine. But now when you want to refactor your software, you break all of those. So as soon as you publish them now, you can't you can't rearrange anything. It's like you can't rearrange the furniture in your house anymore because you already told people that if you walk in and sit here, there will be a chair. And you go, well, I'm not going to standardize the arrangement of my house because I want to be able to rearrange it. So one of the things about this, using AI, is that the only standard they have is that the Infobot understands it. And so it understands your old interface, so that's fine. If you create a new one, it should be, it works for 50% of the population. It should be able to figure it out. And if it can't, you can always tell it, teach it or do something to make it so that it can understand. And once it understands it, all of the AT users, everybody else now, goes off the back.
But you're making a very big assumption that you can build an AI that understands any arbitrary interface.
Ah.
So are you expecting that it just knows how it can gate the screen interface? Is there at some level?
No, there's nothing
you've got to have
behind
an
it.
API that it's connected
No,
to?
no API. No, literally, it uses machine vision.
On the screen, so it's
and
interpreting the
the
screen.
normal, yes. So what it can do is it can touch or type
it's
on a
a vision.
keystroke. Yeah, it's all AI based off machine vision, right. Oh yeah, there's no API. The Infobot is a human being. So literally, if you can make the average person do it, the Infobot can do it. You have to do nothing. You have no API, no. The API is on the back of the Infobot to all the special interfaces.
And so it's interfacing basically to the video driver
Yes.
to get the,
Or you could even have
pixel. It's
it.
basically
You could even
getting
have it
pixels.
to the camera.
Basically a pixel
And so,
level
yeah, it's a
interface.
pixel. Yeah, right. We're something close. But you can even have it so that you come up, a person who's blind comes up to and just holds the camera out to a microwave oven. And the thing just tells him, where to push and stuff like this. And he's talking to it, and it does an interface. If you had a little household robot, a button pusher robot, then you wouldn't even have to do that. You just interact with your machine, and it would go over and push the buttons that you would have to push. But for anything on the computer, yes, it would work off an image of the screen and the keyboard and the input controls. Yep, that's the goal.
Do you think there's anything murky that comes with the requirement that our Infobot has to be able to understand your spec? Because then the question is,
Our Infobot has to
sorry, has
understand
to understand your program.
No, it doesn't understand the program. It only has to understand the interface.
Yes, so do you think there's anything murky that comes with the statement that we don't necessarily force a rigorous standard on you, we're not making you put everything through HTML validation, for example, we're just saying, if our bot understands it, then it's good. For example, how would you determine if the bot understands it? Would you get a recursive list of every single submenu and have someone manually check that those menus are correct?
No, what you do is you have the ability for someone to, for example, right now with HTML you have to have headers marked as headers and everything else, but I don't need to have headers marked as headers. I can see it's a header, okay? So the Infobot can see it's a header because it's bigger, bolder, and standing off by itself. So the same way we recognize it can. Everything about the Infobot is scary to me from one standpoint, and that is that the first people who are going to use it is going to be NSA and everybody else to go, because now they'll be able to access and read. Although I probably think that most of the Infobot already exists in NSA. They already know how to screen scrape and understand all the different interfaces and stuff they run into. Yeah, the way you tell if it can use it is whether or not somebody else, say somebody who's blind, says, can I use the site? And so they would use their interface, and as long as they can navigate through the site and operate it, then obviously the Infobot is understanding it. The interesting part is that once the Infobot understands it and can use it, you don't have to test it for all the different disabilities. You just have to figure out whether or not you can, the Infobot can do it by having the Infobot present an alternate interface designed for average people, and if they can do everything on the site, then you know that it can understand the site.
So you're saying the company should invest in user testing?
Well, they should do that before you got an Infobot, yes.
Well, yeah, so if the only way to check that the infobot is working correctly on their website
Oh,
is
yeah,
to have it user
when you're
tested,
doing,
then
yeah,
they
when
should.
you're doing user testing, part of your user testing would be having somebody use it through the infobot, yeah.
And without, if you can't afford user testing?
Say what?
If you're a company, if you're a small company that that can't afford user testing, how do they check that the infobot is working correctly on there?
Well, the easiest way is to just design it so that it's usable by half of the people. The infobot will do it, and if you have a problem, somebody's going to call you up and tell you. They're going to say, hey, for some reason the infobot isn't able to figure this out. But if you're a small company, you're usually not making an interface that's going to be using something so completely different than every other interface that the infobot wouldn't understand it. Anything in HTML is going to be no problem because HTML is so regularized that the infobot's not going to have any trouble with any HTML page. It's if you're doing something in JavaScript, like you decided to put information in your menu instead of being a hamburger menu or 3 dots or a menu bar, you're going to make the menu be spinning globe. And the answer was, well, how's anybody going to know that the spinning globe is the menu? And the answer is, well, the first time somebody clicks on it, oh, hey, here's one. The infobot could probably watch your user testers, your regular user testers, and it would figure out what's going on. The person who clicked on the spinning globe and got a menu out of it, the infobot would know that. The interesting thing is as soon as one infobot knows it, they all know it. Okay? So if there was something you did which only some human beings would figure out and everybody else wouldn't, first of all, that's going to be kind of not very good product, but as soon as the infobot was exposed to somebody using it, they could see that that was a menu. I mean, there will be challenges, but for the vast overwhelming, instead of 6%, we're going to be up at 94%, and then as infobots get smarter, they would get more. I think the real challenge is going to come when we have direct brain interfaces and things like this, where you don't have a screen, where the information is actually being fed directly into your cortex. But even then, that'll be even easier than our alternative approaches. Yeah.
One more question?
I was wondering,
Yeah, 2 of them here, and then we'll go. Yeah.
I was wondering how would you envisioning who would own the infobot?
Oh, the infobot is free and open source. It would be an open source utility available to the country. Because everybody should be able, any company who's creating a product should be able to contribute to it, because you don't want to have it that anybody's got an unlevel playing field. And if this is where you're going to make, that's the contract we have. And by the way, it wouldn't just be industry not having anything to do with accessibility and us working on the back ends. There's a lot of people in companies that would love to be working on creating interfaces for people with disabilities and yelling at their own teams to learn accessibility. Okay.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, what about things that are just inherently complicated, like 3D graphics? Like, you can't simplify that down. You can't dumb it down to the point where.
Well, 3D graphic. Oh yeah, you can. 3D graphics are actually easier for AI to deal with.
No, I mean so like the task of making a 3D model is not something.
The task of making a 3D
Yes,
model.
that's like not something
Well,
you can do.
that's
simply.
There are some things that are complicated that can be made simpler by making them a sequence of tasks. Okay, and so the infobot can do that kind of a thing, or the back-end interfaces can do that. There are some things that are, can you make it so that it'll be simple to solve quadratic equations, or to create very, very complex things? No. Will you make it simple to be able to write music? No, that's not the infobot's. The infobot's purpose is to be able to make everybody be able to access the interface. But if they don't have the skill to do what's on the other side of the interface, then no, that's, I mean, maybe people will start building more functionality, but the infobot that I'm talking about, the level 1 infobot, if you will, is just making the interface usable by the person.
So
It's
you
an
can
interface to a
you can
physics
see
site.
what's on there, right? So you can see the tools that are on there. It's like,
So that they can see and operate and yeah. And sometimes you'll have a page where you're supposed to do 5 things on it. And for cognitive, the easiest thing to do is to present it as 5 1-steps, or somebody with attention deficit disorder. It's easier to ask them, one question, another question, another question, another question, than it is to ask them 5 questions all at once, because the complexity blows them away, even though they could handle each one. They just can't focus on one at a time. So that kind of thing we can do. But no, if the site is to do a physics experiment, they don't understand physics, that's a different. That's the other thing we worry about AI, and that is that when it can do that, then we don't need anybody to do it, because the AI already knows how to do it. So if you can make it so that somebody who doesn't know how to do physics can push a button and it'll do the physics for them, then we don't need the person to push the button. Kind of thing. So anyway, grand challenge. Thank you for your time. But if you have any questions, we also have a Skunkworks that meets on Fridays, if people are just interested at Trace Center. And all the Tracy's get together and sort of talk about projects and things we're doing. But anybody else is welcome to pop in anytime they want to. It's 3 o'clock, usually over in the Fish Bowl. Thank you.